Good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion recorded on June 19th, 2023, occurred on 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about today, including two invests out there, both of which could become rare twin tropical cyclones in the main development region over the next several days, and a potential hurricane that could be forming. So let's go ahead and jump straight into everything. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this morning, we noticed it is fairly active across the basin right now. First of all, we have Invest Area 92L that is likely to become Tropical Depression 3 or Tropical Storm Brett very soon, actually, potentially as of 11 a.m. this morning. And we also have a newly designated Invest Area 93L that has merged off the coast of Africa yesterday and could become a tropical storm over the next several days. We're also watching another system that will be emerging off the coast of Africa during the next few days, and this could also develop into a tropical cyclone as some legitimate support has been starting to pick up on this. So it's getting fairly active fairly quickly. So taking a look here at the tropical weather outlook that was issued as of 8 a.m. this morning from the National Hurricane Center, here's Invest Area 92L now with 100% chance of development as this moves west-northwest towards the Lesser Antilles over the next several days. And then Invest Area 93L now with a 40% chance of tropical cyclone formation as this generally heads off towards the west-northwest over the next several days. And then we'll be watching another system that is emerging off the coast of Africa to see if this also gets tagged from the National Hurricane Center as more model support has begun to pick up on this potential system. Taking a look at our storm this morning, this right here is Invest Area 92L, looking fairly well organized this morning. This is looking at the last half hour of visible satellite imagery. And we notice, first of all, that on the northern side, we've got outflow starting to expand fairly nicely at this point. Convection is quite nice across this area. We've got fairly decent convection. And if we roll this at least back for the last hour and a half, you'll be able to see much more cyclonic spin. The blank images there is because it was a change in the mesosectors here. We're looking at the GOES 16 mesosector 2, so a more zoomed in high resolution look at it. And we notice that there is increasingly getting some stronger westerlies here on the southern side of the system, indicating to me that this is a fairly closed circulation at this point. And as such, the National Hurricane Center gives this a near 100% chance of development. In fact, I do believe that this will become a tropical depression or storm within the next 2 hours or so. So what we're looking at here is the HWAR forecast. We're looking at the upper level wind environment with this system. We're going to exclude the initial surface intensity for now, as that has a tendency to be overdone in some of the hurricane-specific models with pre-genesis waves, which is technically what we're still dealing with at this point. But right now we notice that in our system we have a fairly nice poleward outflow channel indicated by the evacuation of air in the streamlines to the north of this system. This indicates that we're getting some surface convergence with upper level divergence, but the southerly outflow channel is still lacking. There really isn't much of an outflow channel to the south with this system right now. However, as we progress throughout the next several days, that begins to change as the upper level anticyclone becomes more established with our system. And this is going to be fairly well positioned to intensify during the next several days. In fact, the HWAR forecast is calling for this to be 995 millibars, which is reasonable. This would put it at kind of a low to mid-range tropical storm within about the next 2 days or so, on Tuesday at 2 p.m. So we're looking tomorrow in the afternoon. This is a reasonable depiction of the intensity, in my honest opinion. So the outflow channel has become fairly well organized and established at this point. This leads to divergence aloft, and if you've heard me talking about this before, divergence aloft increases convergence at the surface and allows for thunderstorms to develop. So this is a fairly reasonable intensity at this point for this particular system. And this continues to deepen actually into a hurricane on the model. And what I do want to emphasize here is that, relatively speaking, most of the forecast guidance does make this system become Hurricane Brett within the next couple of days. And I don't see anything in particular to suggest otherwise at this point. However, I would still be calling for kind of a mid-range tropical storm. Just to see a hurricane out here this time of the year would be super just rare, and so I'm not really ready to forecast the unprecedented quite yet. I wouldn't say unprecedented, but very rare. But generally speaking, this actually develops into a relatively powerful hurricane on the forecast model and continues this into the Caribbean over the next several days. Now, here's the problem with this. So we'll back this up here to late Thursday night, and we notice that in the wind pattern, there's going to be things that change over the next couple of days as the system nears the island chain. First of all, there's a big upper level high over the Caribbean, pumping in a lot of anticyclonic flow, just a lot of wind shear across the eastern part of the Caribbean. And there's also this trough in here from an area of low pressure towards the north. And this trough is creating also a lot of vertical shear. So we've got a lot of shear coming out of the westerly direction at this point. And if a storm is strong, such as the HWRF suggests here, this outflow channel might be able to repel against some of this vertical shear. However, if a weaker storm exists in this environment, it is going to get sheared apart. The shear is going to tilt the vortex over onto its side, displace the thunderstorms, and inherently it disrupts the entire cyclone process because you need a straight up vertical tower of thunderstorms to really allow for that latent heat release to, be at its greatest. You're concentrating the heat in one area and not just spread out over a large area. Like with vertical sheared storms. So this is going to be something to monitor over the next several days. And as I'm going to talk about now, the intensity does still play a key role in where our system ends up going. So what we're looking at here is the GFS ensembles from the 6Z run, and we're looking at the forecast density. So the warmer colors indicate where you are getting into some of the higher track densities. So what you notice here is that through the next several days, the deterministic and ensemble mean are fairly close in agreement here. But over time, this begins to share its differences, with the deterministic GFS still getting this storm quite strong and is able to lift it north and east of the Lesser and Greater Antilles here. However, the ensemble mean and most of the forecast density has begun to shift its concentration now into a storm moving into the Caribbean, generally north of Barbados at this point. There's not really many members that take it south of Barbados. In fact, there's only one member that takes it far to the south here, Barbados. So I think for folks in Trinidad and Tobago, and we'll talk about this here in greater detail in a second, I think for Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, everything is going to be in the clear from this potential system. We notice here on the GFS ensemble mean sea level pressure tracks that generally the stronger members here continue to turn this north and east away from the Lesser Antilles here within the next several days. So if this does manage to get strong out here and in relatively short order, this may have a chance to still kind of just sneak past the islands here. But this on this current forecast trajectory, even a pass to the north and east of the islands would still bring some heavy rainfall and certainly some heavier swells and seas to all of those mariners out there. So this is still going to bring some impacts, I think, irregardless of exactly where this tracks at this given point. If we look at the super ensemble plots here from Tomer Berg, this kind of gives an idea of what to expect over the next several days in terms of where our storm is really going to go. This takes in the European GFS, the UK and the CMC, excuse me. So this takes in all of the forecast models that are out here. So we continue this further out in time, and we notice that the majority of the ensemble mean from all of these different members continue this well into the Caribbean, I think. And I genuinely am starting to really believe and buy this scenario a lot more. So the bottom line here right now for portions of the Lesser Antilles. First of all, the tropical cyclone impact risk has been updated now. So we're looking at a limited threat to portions of the islands right now, generally from about Barbados and northward to the U.S. British Virgin Islands. So this entire area here, let me highlight that better. This entire area is under a limited threat. So the northern and central part of the island chain and the USVI has that limited threat for a potential tropical system to be moving through sometime later this week. Now, if you live out there in Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Hispaniola, Guyana, Trinidad, and Tobago, the threat right now, the tropical cyclone impact risk is at a fat 0. There is no threat in my opinion, so at this point, I would just continue to go about your daily business. Do not cancel any plans. However, if you do live in the island chain and even the USVI to some extent, I would certainly begin to just monitor the forecast and just kind of check back as things are going to change between now and the next couple of days. Right now, our confidence level on this is a low to mid-range moderate threat or moderate confidence in this potential system moving through the Caribbean. There's an increasing concern for this to happen. Now, more than likely, this is just going to bring some very beneficial rainfall to the area, not much wind, and not much in the way of surge or anything like that, at least given what I am seeing at the moment. But again, this forecast is very subject to change, so continue to check back on that. Shifting our attention back to Invest area at 93L, this is our next potential tropical system that is going to be forming over the next several days. And we're going to talk about this just very briefly. This system right now is going to be heavily tethered to future Brett over here. As you can see, it's spinning away now, likely on the verge of becoming a tropical storm. This system right here, Invest area 93L, has definitely built a fairly decent mid-level presence, and there is a signature of some mid-level vorticity or spin in the atmosphere associated with this wave envelope, and it is relatively convectively active for the morning as we just kind of went through the diurnal maximum cycle, and now we're going to be approaching the diurnal minimum cycle as we progress throughout the remainder of today. So this system is expected to continue moving on a west-northwesterly trajectory over the next several days, and we're going to look at the upper-level wind environment for this system real briefly. So this is looking here at the HVAS-A. This is the newest hurricane model that is going to replace the old HMON and HWRF hurricane forecast models later this year. Again, we're looking at the upper level environment centered over 92L, but again, we're going to be talking about 93L. You don't really see it right now, but if we progress forward over the next several days, you can definitely see the reflection of the surface low here with 93L. Now, the biggest question is, what impact does 92L have on this system? It's going to be running into cooler sea surface temperatures in the wake of 92L, but I think the biggest problem is going to be the upper level outflow shearing the storm, because the outflow is kind of coming around like this, and typically you would see outflow trying to go like this. So this is going to be a little bit of a problem because Invest 92L future Brett is going to cause shear to be over top of our system. Now, in the HVAS forecast, this is one of the more aggressive runs here with developing this into a full-blown hurricane on the forecast model, but you can very clearly see that the outflow from 92L is going to disrupt the circulation with 93. And we'll take a sounding here. No, I guess we can't get it. But generally speaking, yeah, we can't get it. But there does seem to be shear that is going to be increasing over top of our system with 93L. So as far as intensity goes, this may become a brief tropical depression or storm, but will more than likely remain under hurricane limits, as the shear from 92L is likely going to impact this in a pretty substantial negative way. So we are also going to be monitoring another tropical wave that is going to emerge off the coast of Africa over the next several days. It's currently located somewhere right in about here off the kind of map, really. This is going to be moving into the Atlantic over the next several days, and we're going to have to watch this fairly closely as well. All right. So it's very busy in the Atlantic Basin, but for now, I'm going to sign out. I'll be talking to you guys more later this afternoon and evening. So God bless. Take care. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more here in just a few hours.